as democracy failed in India. So India celebrates 75 years of independence. Has the democracy failed in India? Well, it is true that democracy is collapsed in many countries. Democracy has been dismantled in several nations. Even today, many nations struggle to sustain the democratic governments. So, what is the experience of India? What do you think if you're asked to write a balance sheet of Indian democracy? What will be your answer? Well, if you look at the democracy in India, there are certain features which are commonly identified with democracy, and check whether these things exist in India. If so, to what extent? So, what do you mean by democracy? Democracy begins with adult franchise, where every citizen, irrespective of caste, class, creed, gender, religion, region, has an equal right to exercise the franchise. You mean right to vote? Earlier it was 21 years, now it has come down to 18 years. I'm sure you'll be voting in the next elections. So, in many countries in the world, took decades, took centuries to give the women of their countries right to vote. But India, right from the beginning, right since the independence, women are eligible to vote in our country. So the democracy essentially begins with the right to vote, right to elect our own representatives. What differentiates democracy from other forms of government, like monarchy, where the king ascends to the throne as a hereditary right? It is not decided by merit. It is not decided by representation. It is not decided by popularity. It is essentially decided by the hereditary aspect. So look at a country like Saudi Arabia. Look at a country like Jordan. Unless the person comes from the ruling class, so the royal family, you're not eligible to be the king. Whether the person who has come from the royal family is competent or not is absolutely inconsequential in a monarchy. Look at a dictatorship. The dictator grabbed the power by force, remains in power by force. The people are mandated to obey the dictator. Otherwise, they will have to face repression. So dictatorship is also totalitarianism is also a form of dictatorship. So the people have no right to choose their own representatives. Look at a country like Afghanistan. Taliban has come to power. Mullah Hassan Akhund has become the prime minister. Abdul Ghani Baradar has become deputy prime minister. Sirajuddin Akhani has become interior minister. Mullah Yaqub has become defense minister. Who decided it? Are the people of Afghanistan in any way concerned with the elevation of these people? Absolutely not. For example, Pashtun, an ethnic tribe in Afghanistan. Afghanistan has several ethnic tribes like Pashtuns, Tajaks, Uzbeks, Turkmens, Nuristans, Hazaras. Afghanistan has a number of ethnic nationalities, population belonging to various ethnic groups. Pashtuns account for around 40% of the population. Look at the government in Afghanistan. 33 members, along with the Prime Minister, Deputy Prime Minister, are sworn in as the ministers. Out of the 33, 30 are Pashtuns. Only two Tajaks and one Uzbeks. Hazaras have no representation. Turkmens have no representation. Surprisingly, women have no representation. So there is no representation for women. And when the question was asked to the Afghanistan Taliban representative, I'm sure some of you might have read in the newspapers, what did Taliban representative say? What role women have in government? Their duty is to give birth to children, take care of children, take care of the family. They have no role to play in a government. So obviously women constitute half of the population, almost nearer to the half of the population. And there are no representation because the Afghanistan is an Islamic emirate. It's not a democratic country. It's not a democratic country because the people have no right to elect their own representatives. So the democracy basic principle is people have a right to elect their own representative. It is the people, anybody can be a representative. Anybody and everybody has a right to vote. Well, when I say anybody, will a criminal be allowed? Not at all. If somebody who has faced conviction is obviously not eligible to contest. Other than that, every citizen of India, irrespective of caste, class, creed, region, religion, gender, can contest the elections. And everybody have a right to vote. So the people choose the government. I'm sure we still remember the definition of democracy given in the school textbooks. Democracy is the government by the people, for the people, and of the people. It's a basic definition. So look at the Indian democracy. So when we ask this question, has democracy succeeded in India or has democracy failed in India? Let us identify the features that constitute a democracy and verify, evaluate whether India stood the test. So as I told you, people electing their own representatives is the basic feature of a democracy. So there should be periodic elections. There should be peaceful transfer of power from one elected body to the other. And people should have a right to choose from a menu of political parties. That is the basic essence of freedom. What do you mean by freedom? Essentially mean choice. Freedom essentially mean choice. When you go to a hotel, you will get a menu card. You will order any of them. But if the hotel owner says you should only order onion dosha, nothing more than that. Whether you like it or not, somebody may like masala dosha, somebody may like pesarattu. Nothing, you should eat only onion dosha. That is not freedom. That's not democracy. So one party, single party systems are not democracies. So there should be democracy in its modern political sense means a choice. I should have a choice to elect my leader from a number of contestants, number of political parties, number of political views, political colors, political ideas. That is called the choice. So the beauty of democracy is the choice. The beauty of democracy is everyone is equal in terms of exercising the choice. Whether you are whether Mukesh Ambani or a beggar, as long as he has a voter ID card, even a beggar can vote. So whether Mukesh Ambani, a man with billions and billions of money, tons and tons of money, whose profits last year were 55,461 crores. And an office boy working in Reliance Industries Limited who get a salary of 10,000. See the stark inequality. So Mukesh Ambani annual income runs into hundreds of crores. His monthly income runs into crores, perhaps hundreds of crores. Whereas the office boy's income is only 10,000. This is the humongous inequality that exists in the realm of economics. But on an election day, is there any difference? Mukesh Ambani has to stand in the queue in a polling booth. State Bank of India, if he wants to open an account, I'm sure SBI chairman will go to Mukesh Ambani's house. But will the presiding officer of a polling booth go to Mukesh Ambani to get his vote? Will Mukesh Ambani be allowed to even vote by post? Unless you are a polling official, you are not entitled to vote by post. So see the beauty of democracy. Mukesh Ambani or an office boy in the Reliance Industries, if they are residing in the same locality, come under the same polling booth, have to stand in the queue and vote. So that is democracy. Well, equality begins there and perhaps equality ends there also. But certainly equality begins there. So the universal adult franchise, where anybody and everybody who is above 18 years have a right to choose their own representative. And you have a choice because there is a multi-party political system. There are so many political parties. If you are from Andhra Pradesh, you can vote for YSR Congress, you can vote for TDP, you can vote for BJP, you can vote for Congress, you can vote for Janasena, you can vote for Bahujan Samaj Party, you can vote for CPI, CPIM, you can vote for Congress, you can vote for any party you like. Nobody forces you to vote only for a particular party. So that is the choice because we have a multi-party political system. So Indian democracy survived in India, succeeded in India because we have a multi-party political system. We have periodic elections. We have the universal adult franchise. We also have a peaceful transfer of power. Look at a country like Myanmar. People vote in the elections, but the military refuses to hand over the power to the elected government. Military says nothing doing, I will remain in power. But have you seen such a situation in India anytime? Even before the results are declared, Manmohan Singh resigned, giving way to Narendra Modi to become the Prime Minister. So Manmohan Singh attended Narendra Modi's swearing-in ceremony. So there is peaceful transfer of power from one leader to the other leader, from one government to the other government, one party to the other government. So multi-party political system, peaceful transfer of power, 2, 3 periodic elections, 4 universal adult franchise, 5 we have an independent judiciary. As I told in my lecture on what makes Indian Constitution so unique, the checks and balances are a significant aspect of Indian Constitution. Power is not concentrated in one hand. Narendra Modi, even if he wants, though he is the Prime Minister of the country, cannot do something that Constitution of India does not permit. So there is an empire, there is a referral. So Modi may be a very strong man, maybe the most popular political leader in India today, but still he cannot cross that Lakshmana Rekha of the Constitution, the constitutional Lakshmana Rekha. If he crosses that Constitution, what will happen? Immediately courts will intervene, say that this law is unconstitutional. We are striking it down. Well, the parliament can't say we are elected by the people. We have a right to make any law. Who are you to tell? The judges of the Supreme Court are not elected. but they are selected, they are appointed by a process. I'll tell you more about how judiciary functions in some other video, some other lecture. But let me tell you, so the Supreme Court or High Court can strike down a law made by an elected house, elected representatives. Because what is the reference point? Constitution of India. Many members of parliament think that they are very supreme. I was part of the Legislative Council, upper house in United Andhra Pradesh and subsequently in Telangana. Members of the legislature used to believe that they are supreme. I used to tell them that we are not supreme, though we are elected by the people. Who is supreme? It is the Constitution of India. Is Supreme Court supreme? Not at all. Is Parliament supreme? Not at all. Is Prime Minister of India supreme? Not at all. Prime Minister of India will be in office as long as he enjoys the majority support in Parliament. The moment he loses majority support in Parliament, Prime Minister has to resign. And Parliament will obviously, its term and its tenure ends after 5 years. And even if Parliament is elected by the people, if it makes a law that goes contrary to the Constitution of India, Supreme Court or High Court can strike it down. But what will happen if a Supreme Court judge or High Court judge behaves in an unconstitutional way? He can be impeached by the Parliament. He can be removed by Parliament through a process called impeachment. I'll tell you what do you mean by impeachment, what is contempt of court in some other lecture. But at this point of time, we have to understand that even a Supreme Court judge or even a Supreme Court Chief Justice is not invincible. He is not almighty. He should also bow down to the Constitution of India. So if he behaves in a manner unbecoming of his position in that highest office, the Parliament has the power to remove him through a very complex and cumbersome process called impeachment. So therefore, who is powerful in India? Who is supreme in India? It is the Constitution of India which is supreme. Who has given the Constitution to India? Nobody else. The people of India gave the Constitution to themselves. If you read the preamble says, we the people of India. So nobody has given us the Constitution. We have given the Constitution to ourselves. This is the true essence of democracy. So when there is democracy is based on three pillars. One, executive. Executive means government, central government, state government, local government. Then we have legislature, central legislature, parliament, state legislature, assembly, and we have judiciary. These are called the three pillars of the of democracy. And what links them and what separates them? Constitution is the integral link between the three. And constitutionally defined relationship links them and separates them. So it is called separation of powers. The Constitution clearly defines what are the contours of powers of a parliament, what are the contours of powers of a Supreme Court, what are the contours of powers of the government of India. So it is it's called separation of powers. The Constitution clearly separates powers of government, which in political terminology is called executive, or parliament, or judiciary, Supreme Court or High Court. So this separation of powers demands that judiciary should be independent. So judiciary is independent. When can judiciary question the government? It can only question when it is independent. If it is not independent, it can't question. If you have read the newspapers, So the Supreme Court of India has come down heavily on the government of India for making appointments to tribunals. So the Supreme Court has simply chided the government of India. It admonished, it scolded the government of India. Look at the beauty of democracy. Government of India is elected by the people. The Supreme Court is not elected by the people, but Supreme Court is a custodian of the Constitution of India. Supreme Court is empire. You may be a great batsman, you may be Sachin Tendulkar, but once the empire says, you're out, you're out. You can't say, I'm Sachin Tendulkar, I will only decide when I am out. You can't say. You may be a great bowler, but you can't say, I will declare whether the batsman is LBW. You can't. There is an empire and empire will decide. So empire is the conscience keeper of the game. So ultimately empire decides whether the batsman is out or not. And the batsman may not agree with empire decision at times. There are times when the player protests on the ground also. But ultimately, whose decision prevails? It is empire's decision that prevails. These batsmen may be the greatest batsman on the earth. He may be Sachin Tendulkar, the world's greatest batsman. But he has to bow down to the decision of the empire. So what does it mean? It means the empire is final as far as deciding the rules of the game. Similarly, the empire here is the constitution. Constitution is the rules of the game and the court judiciary is the empire. So therefore, independent judiciary. So the empire should be independent of both the teams. So therefore, here judiciary, independent judiciary. Well, India has this independent judiciary. There may be many complications in it. There may be many attempts to try to encroach the powers of judiciary. There may be controversies in the appointment of judges. Governments quite often do not appoint the judges who question them. Governments favor certain appointments. All these are problems. So, but that doesn't mean Indian judiciary is not independent. It is largely independent. With all, some weaknesses will always be there. Then, as I told you, the three estates, executive, legislature, judiciary. Then there is a fourth estate called the media. Media is called the fourth estate. The civil society, you and me, we are called the fifth estate. So the fourth estate is the media. Media should have freedom. One of the finest features of democracy is the freedom of expression, free speech. American Constitution, First Amendment talks about the free speech. So freedom of expression is the basic tenet of liberty. Liberty of thought, liberty of expression. So unless you have a liberty of thought, you cannot have a liberty of expression. Liberty of thought and expression are vital to democracy. If there is no free speech, there is no democracy. So freedom of expression includes freedom of press, freedom of media. There is no phrase called freedom of media or freedom of press in the Constitution of India. Supreme Court in the Ramesh Thapar versus State of Madras case interpreted freedom of expression enjoyed by every citizen as a freedom of press. Well, now it can be called as a freedom of media. Well, freedom to express. There was a rule called 66A of IT Act, where you can be penalized for posting something on Facebook, posting something on Instagram. If the government thinks that it is abusive, it is incriminating. Well, the Supreme Court has struck it down. Has said 66A is unconstitutional. It is undemocratic. So you have freedom to express on your social media. That doesn't mean you can do whatever you want. As I told you, in our country, as per Indian constitution, no freedom is absolute in India, including freedom of worship. Any freedom is subject to reasonable restrictions. So, just because you have freedom of expression, you can't indulge in immoral talk. You can't post something which is highly objectionable, highly immoral. You cannot post something which creates communal disharmony. You can't post that because the public order should not be affected. So there is what we call as a reasonable restriction. But free speech is exercised in the form of freedom of media. Every day I comment on Prime Minister, I comment on Chief Ministers, I comment on many things on television, on my YouTube, in my website, because I have freedom to express. Because the Constitution of India gives me, the citizen of India, freedom to express, free speech. So the freedom of media is another characteristic where Indian democracy has witnessed many attempts to stifle this freedom. I gave you an example, 66A of IT Act. Even if you post something, you can be arrested. But Supreme Court said nothing doing. It is unconstitutional. You have no business to arrest someone just because he or she expressed an opinion on something. As long as it is not immoral, as long as it is not obscene, as long as it is not hate mongering or it is divisive, you have every right to express your opinion. So that is called the freedom of expression. So how many things I have explained till now? One, periodic, universal adult franchise. Anybody and everybody have a right to vote and elect a representative. One. Two, periodic elections. Three, peaceful transfer of power. Four, multi-party political system. Five, independent judiciary. Six, free media. Seven, military under civilian control. Another feature of a democracy is military will be under civilian, should be under civilian control. Who should control military? Not the army that controls army. It is the elected governments that control army. Well, if it is an operational decision on the battlefield, assuming that an enemy Pakistani soldier fired bullets on Indian army, you can't expect the army chief to take the permission of the prime minister or the defense minister to give it back to the Pakistani soldiers. That is called operational freedom. Obviously, military has operational freedom. So in the battlefield, they have the freedom. But ultimately, they are under civilian leadership. So the President of India is the Commander-in-Chief of Armed Forces. Look at this beauty. It's not a soldier who is the head of the armed forces. It's the President of India. President of India is the Commander-in-Chief of Armed Forces. Why the Constitution says this? It is to ensure that the military is under elected civilian government. So a military of Air Force chief or army chief can't decide we will have a war with Pakistan. They can't decide we will have a war with China. They can't decide we will launch a nuclear attack. They can't decide. That they are the decisions of the civilian government. Except for the operational conflicts on the border, some skirmishes are there, some fight is there. Well, that's a different thing. But if it's a full-scale war, they can't. So that is the democracy. Look at many countries. Look at a country like Pakistan. Military even today controls who should be in power by proxy. How did Imran Khan get elected as the prime minister? Does he have popular support? Certainly not. Military propped him up. So he is in the prime minister's seat only because military supports him. The moment he says, I will not accept the military dictates. You will have to go. There will be a military coup. Pakistan has seen military coups led by General Ziaul Haq against Zulfikar Ali Bhutto. Bhutto was hanged to death also. We have General Parvez Musharraf led by coup. Have you ever seen have you ever heard even an attempt in India for a military coup? You can't even imagine because we are a mature democracy. We are not Pakistan. Pakistan has seen army coup, but we have never seen. Bangladesh has seen army coup. Maldives has seen, but India has never seen army coup. And there was absolutely Indian army has never ever expressed political intentions. They are politically neutral. Let BJP govern, let Congress govern, let somebody else govern. It is absolutely not inconsequential for army, for air force, for navy. They will simply obey the command, obey the leadership of the person or a party or a government which is elected by the people of India. So that is another feature of Indian democracy. Well, there are limitations to this. All these free and fair elections. This is another aspect of democracy. Elections should be free and fair. Everybody should have an equal attempt to contest. Well, there are several restrictions. I'll talk about that also. But these are all the finest features of Indian democracy. So you have periodic elections, peaceful transfer of power, multi-party system, universal adult franchise, independent judiciary, free media, military under civilian control, free and fair elections, respect for the diversity. We independent of religion, there's no discrimination. We believe in equality, we believe in liberty. So these are all aspects of democracy. India has more Muslims than Pakistan. Many people do not know that the population of Muslims in India is more than the population of Muslims in Pakistan. So India has more Muslim population than Pakistan. So that is the greatness of India. Because we believe, as I told you earlier, that we believe in an inclusivity. We believe in a country which is inclusive. You may be a Hindu, you may be a Muslim, you may be a Christian, you may be a Sikh, you may be a Jain, you may be a Parsi, or you may be a non-believer, but you are an Indian. As long as you are an Indian, you have equal rights. You will never be discriminated on the basis of your belief in religion. You may be a Hindi, Maratha, Gujarati, Punjabi, Odia, Telugu, Tamil, Kannada, Malayalam, or Bengali. You may speak Punjabi, you may speak any language, but you are an Indian. So you are no government just because the Prime Minister is from Gujarat, Home Minister is Gujarat. Gujaratis will not have any special privileges in the country. So just because he's the Prime Minister and Home Minister of Gujaratis do not have any special privileges. Telugu people will not have to face any discrimination. Because that is the character of Indian democracy. You have a multilingual, multi-ethnic, multi-religious society. And these are all the healthy aspects of democracy. Let me now come to the negative aspects, the shortcomings, limitations, failures. 70 years may be a very long period, 75 years may be a very long period in the life of human beings. But in the life of a nation, it's not such a long period. We have seen hundreds of years of monarchy. So therefore, 75 years is not a very long period in the life of a country, in the life of a polity. So therefore, there are certain problems. Which democracy has no problems? Look at America. Have you ever seen in India a sitting president of India stating that he doesn't believe in elections? Donald Trump even today says he is the president of America. He will not accept the mandate. He will not accept the result even after Biden becomes the president of America. In our country, this never happened, at least. So we are better than America in that sense. We have never witnessed a situation where president of the country provokes his own supporters to attack the parliament. Have you ever seen, after losing the election, Sonia Gandhi exhorting the congressmen to attack parliament? Have you ever seen, can you imagine Narendra Modi exhorting BJP men and women to attack parliament if he loses elections? Simply he will walk to the Rashtrapati Bhavan, submit his resignation and leave the place. But that did not happen in America. So President Donald Trump created a chaotic America. So such a oldest democracy has to pass through its most unabashed phase of history. So therefore, in our country too, there are problems. As I told you, when American democracy has problems, you can also obviously expect some problems in Indian democracy. What are those problems? One, excesses by legislature and executive. Quite often, the government of the day, the elected members of the parliament try to encroach upon the powers of freedom of judiciary, independence of media, independent institutions like election commission. So legislative and executive excesses, independent of whoever may be in power in the country. Number two, there is a greater centralization. I'll talk about this when I speak about federalism. The constitution believes in distribution of powers. It is center on the states. But center has been encroaching upon states. Three, there are attempts to dilute the secular federal character of India. So despite secular country, we quite often find attack on minorities. We often find hate mongering. We often find fundamentalism from all religions. So this is another problem. Then we have influence of money power. And free and fair elections is a tenet of democracy. Influence of money power is absolutely unacceptable. But we have the influence of money power. Though theoretically, anybody can contest elections. Anybody can become parliament member. But will it happen? I have contested for parliament as an independent candidate. I could only get 14,000 votes. But I could win as a member of the Legislative Council 2 times. So therefore, influence of money is still a big problem in elections, at least to the parliament and assembly. Then you have criminalization of politics. More and more criminals are entering. If you look at from 52 to 2019, you have more members of parliament with criminal antecedents. You will be surprised to know that there are MPs in India, there are members of parliament in India who are facing rape charges, abduction, kidnapping, murder. So we have MPs who have these cases. So like PhD, postdoctoral, IIT, BTech, MS from America. So they have involved in 2 murder cases, 3 rape cases, 4 atrocities. And these are the members of parliament who rule. So this is the criminalization of politics. And then you also have few families ruling the country. Monarchy believes in hereditary rule. Democracy negates hereditary rule. Though people are getting elected, we also find few families controlling the political power. Jawaharlal Nehru, Indira Gandhi, Rajiv Gandhi, Sonia Gandhi, Rahul Gandhi. Look at families, Mulayam Singh Yadav, Akhilesh Yadav, Mamata Banerjee, Abhishek Banerjee, Biju Patnaik, Naveen Patnaik. So like this, if you go on, you have every state, Rajashekar Reddy, Jagan Mohan Reddy, K. Chandrasekhar Rao, K.T. Ramarao, M. Karunanidhi, Stalin. Every state you find this. Rajesh Pilot, Sachin Pilot, Madhavraj Scindia, Vijayaraj Scindia, Madhavraj Scindia, Jyotiraditya Scindia. So, state after state, you find this trend. Well, can we question it? Because they are elected by the people. Did Rajshekar Reddy appoint him or did the CM? Not at all. Did he appoint him as an MLA? Not at all. So he got elected. K.T. Ramarao got elected. So though they are elected by the people, we still have the influence of families, political families ruling the country. If you are born in a political family, you have a special privilege compared to other citizens. Perhaps I may be more qualified than Rahul Gandhi, but will I become the Prime Minister? Rahul Gandhi becomes the aspires to become the Prime Minister. I'm not telling he will become. I don't know. But because he's from a privileged family, I may be more competent than many, but I can't. Because though it is a democracy, theoretically, technically, I also have an equal chance of becoming Chief Minister or Prime Minister. But that is not in reality. Members of a privileged political families have an opportunity, have an advantage in Indian democracy too. So we have corruption in public life, massive corruption, which has eaten into the vitals of Indian democracy. Rule of law is again an important feature of democracy. India can feel proud that rule of law is largely maintained in India. But still, there is several instances of where law is violated. So law is violated. Court judgments are ignored. So these are all some of the failures or shortcomings of democracy. So if you write a balance sheet, we have significant achievements. Indian democracy, if I have to conclude my discussion on as democracy failed in India, I will say that democracy is largely successful in India, but with equally significant shortcomings. Indian democracy is largely successful with significant shortcomings, alarming failures. And therefore, we need to broaden, widen, deepen democracy in India.